Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we'll talk about the VCC-80. This was another vehicle that I was able to spade during the Call of the Dragon event, and it's an Italian 9.0 light tank, and I've got to say I actually had a really good time with it. The vehicle itself has a 60mm cannon, and usually these 60mm or 73mm or 76mm, all of these kind of more lower caliber cannons which have APFSDS don't really do too well because they don't do a ton of damage. And the VCC-80 is no different. It definitely struggles with post-penetration damage. But the thing about this is it has an autoloader, and it's a 2-second autoloader. So this means you can usually get 2 or 3 shots off when somebody is still waiting to try and shoot you or get your gun on the target. It does mean that sometimes, especially since it's a 9.0, you run into a lot of stabilizers, that you will have issues where people will just be able to annihilate you, and that sucks. It's not really fun, but at the same time, after playing stuff like the Orbital HVG, after playing stuff like the Roycat 76, for example, I was definitely worried about the VCC-80 and its post-pen damage. But because of the reload, and also because of the matchmaking changes, where a lot of kind of 8.0 to 9.0 vehicles, and also 9.0 to 10.0 vehicles don't exactly have a ton of armor, I didn't find it too much of an issue compared to others. So, the VCC-80, its biggest weakness being the gun, I actually thought wasn't too bad. And as a light tank, the vehicle's great. It has, the thermals, it obviously has the scouting, it's on, the similar chassis to the Dardo, which is pretty decently mobile, and also just has a bunch of empty space in the boot. So if you actually want to kind of take shots and make it so people kind of shoot you but don't do any damage, you can just stick out your booty and then they just hammer it with an APFSDS, and then you can just counterfire or scout or do whatever you need to do. And it just felt really nice. The only big limiting factor really was actually the gun depression, but because of the suspension and how bouncy it can be, even with the stabilizer, you could actually work around that by pushing forward, hitting the brakes, and then reversing back, dipping the gun down to shoot people. And with the reload, if you screw it up, it's okay, because you can just fire again. So overall, it was quite good. The other thing about it is this lineup is super fun. Italy has now quite a few little lineups which are incredibly enjoyable, and the VCC-80 has with it the VBC PT2, which is once again another good light tank, and also doubles as kind of an AA, which works well, and then the OF40, whether it's the Mark IIA, which is in the standard tech tree, or whether it's the MTCA, which is the premium that you can get at the same BR. The difference between the two is the MTCA has a slightly better engine, so if you have access to it, you should be using it. But the VCC-80, along with these two vehicles, works really well. You also have a few CAS elements which aren't exactly great, but they're good enough. Stuff like the CL13, for example, G91s, things like that you can throw in. So, as a lineup, it actually works pretty well. And for Italy, for the longest time, one of the biggest issues with them was, of course, actually being able to do, a ton of damage with these vehicles, but also have the backup if stuff went wrong. And since a lot of these vehicles are light, you are going to have matches where you're just going to get bonked, and that's it. One of the other things about the VCC is you get the APFSDS as a stock round. So you don't have to research it, you don't have to do anything with it, you just get it as a stock round, which makes it a lot easier to grind out. It means that you have kind of your best round as a default. You don't have to spend a cell using it or anything like that. And it has a little trick up its sleeve as well. It doesn't have a top-mounted machine gun, which sucks. It's always nice to have a top-mounted machine gun, but what it has instead is it actually has pretty good elevation on the gun and a rank 3 modification of a HVT shell for this 60mm gun. So if you get the HVT shell and also get the Laser Rangefinder, you can actually deal with helicopters super effectively. What I was doing a lot of the time was bringing along 3 rounds of HVT, since you don't have a ton of ammo with this thing, only 32 rounds for the 60mm, but maybe you could bring 5 or 6. For me, I just brought 3 because I felt like if I got rushed in a helicopter or something like that, it would be a little bit easier to do and deal with, and also still have, rounds for the APFSDS, but you could definitely go more. In a lot of scenarios, I ran out of the HVT because there's a lot of helicopters nowadays around this BR, and I feel like I probably should have taken more. But yeah, it was really good, because once you donked somebody with the 60mm HVT with the Laser Rangefinder, then usually they went down. There wasn't many that actually survived that kind of hit. Also, since it is a scout or a light tank, it was easier to kind of spade because you would have access to those mechanics. Smoke grenades, artillery were also there. It has everything you would want. The only thing it doesn't have, I suppose, is the LWS, but that's not like a huge thing. You don't need that when it comes to the vehicle itself. And I just felt like the vehicle felt really nice. And there was scenarios where I did get annoyed with the gun. When I was facing certain Soviet vehicles, you know, stuff like T-72s, for example, having to be incredibly accurate, and even being incredibly accurate, and then the gun just not going through and not doing anything, it was annoying. You know, it did happen quite a few times, and it's one of those things which will never feel good, right? But it took us 55 battles to spade it. The crazy thing is we had a 65% win rate, which shows how, first of all, fun it was quite to play, you know, being able to flank, smashing people, and also just having a massive impact on the game, which is kind of a huge thing for this type of vehicle. And then also had a positive KD by about 20 in the ground, and then 10 air kills to polish it off as well. As a first spawn, this one felt like it gave a really good advantage to the start of the game to, you know, be able to scout the enemies and then plink, 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 take out a few different enemies. But then sometimes, you know, you would have the start, you would come into a one-on-one situation or something like that, and then you would just get donked and you would, you know, obviously die because your round just didn't do enough damage. And I get why people get frustrated with that, but if you have a look at all of the other mechanics around it, this vehicle works really, really well. If you're actually a fan of light tanks in general, the Italian texture is great for it. You know, you start off, obviously, with some of the early ones, but then you have the AB-43, the M3A3, the Chaffee is in there too, the Hellcat, the Orbital, the Fiat C13, you know, the R3s, and then, of course, the VCCs, the Centauros, and then the VBCs, and the Dardos, and even the Freccia and the K41 to finish it off. There's so many good options for light tanks, and as a person who really enjoys them, it's a really nice tree for that stuff, and the VCC is really no different in that regard. It's such a fun vehicle to play, and I would highly recommend it if you haven't. Just don't always rely on the gun to destroy things. Scout first, and then shoot targets which are, you know, in secondary setups or focusing on other people. If you do have to take on people to, you know, kind of take them out, what you're going to have to do is you really have to learn where the weak spots are. You're really going to have to learn where the ammo is. This thing will destroy ammo, but sometimes it'll just go straight through the ammo and not kill it. But you're also going to need to know where to one-shot vehicles. And that's not the easiest thing to do, but as always in War Thunder, I believe you can do it. So give this thing a go, and give the VBC a go too. I've been playing that one a little bit too. It's been quite a lot of fun as well. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank Schnitzel Stroker, Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Carrion Crow, Nicholas Richardson, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, B. Young, Opium Prime, Masonocrat, Lafouche, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.